Clock shows it's 9:30. So let's go ahead and get started. We'll begin with calling the meeting to order at 9:30. And can we start with a roll call, please?
Sure. Just go ahead and get this recorded. There we go. Good morning, everyone. District 2. District 3. Banning. Beaumont.
Here.
Calimesa.
Here.
Canyon Lake.
Here.
Cathedral City.
Here.
Coachella.
Here.
Desert Hot Springs. Lake Elsinore.
Here.
Palm Desert.
Here.
Palm Springs.
Present.
San Jacinto. City of Riverside. Wildemar.
Here.
Thank you. We do have a quorum.
Okay, great. We'll move on to the Pledge of Allegiance. Everyone, please stand and follow me in the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, and before we get started, let me just make a couple comments. Make sure you silence your cell phones and other communication devices. And if you're participating on Zoom and you'd like to make a public comment, click on the raise hand button. If you're using Zoom on your smartphone, tap your screen, look for the more option, and then raise the hand button on the screen. And for those calling in using the phone line only, you can dial *9 on your keypad to signal that you would like to comment. So we'll move on to item number 4, public comments. Do we have any public comments?
I did not receive any written requests to speak, and I am not seeing any hands raised either.
Okay, and how about any additions or revisions to the agenda?
No, sir.
Okay. So we'll get to the first item, which is the consent calendar. All matters on the consent calendar be approved in a single motion, and I'm open for a motion if someone would like to make it.
So moved, Jeremy Smith. Second, Cathedral City.
And now we'll go to item number 7, which is amendments to agreements for the IE 511 Traveler Information Services.
I think we need a roll call vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm in a hurry. Okay. I apologize. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Sure. District 2. District 3. Banning. Beaumont.
Yes.
Calimesa.
Yes.
Canyon Lake.
Aye.
Cathedral City.
Yes.
Coachella. Coachella. Desert Hot Springs. Lake Elsinore.
Aye.
Palm Desert.
Yes.
Palm Springs.
Aye.
San Jacinto. Riverside. Wildemar.
Aye.
And Coachella.
Yes.
Thank you. The item passes.
Thank you. Now we'll move to item 7. And we have a report on the amendments to agreements for IE 511 Traveler Information Services from Brian Kunanen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Commissioners. The item before you is seeking approval to add funds and extend time for 2 consultant service contracts for ongoing IE 511 Traveler Information Service operations. In November 2020, the Commission approved an agreement between RCTC, the San Bernardino County Transportation Authority, and the Los Angeles County Service Authority for Freeway Emergencies, or Metro, to integrate Riverside and San Bernardino counties into a regional 511 platform currently administered by Metro and servicing LA, Orange, and Ventura counties. This transition was projected to be completed by the end of the 2021 calendar year following Metro's completion of a 511 interactive voice response procurement, and Spanish IVR 511 enhancement project. These projects have taken a little longer than anticipated and have pushed the regional 511 integration timeline into 2022. However, contract terms and budget authority for Iteris and Media Beef, the primary consultants responsible for the ongoing operations and maintenance of the bi-county IE 511 system and administered by the commission, will expire at the end of the calendar year. In order to continue existing IE 511 operations up to 3 months beyond December 31st, until the regional integration is complete, amendments to add funds and extend terms will need to be executed with Iteris and Media Beef. Therefore, staff recommends approval of amendments to increase authorized amounts for both Iteris and Media Beef in the amounts of $55,000 and $7,000 respectively to support continued IE 511 operations through this final stretch. Lastly, SBCTA will reimburse the commission for up to 50% of the cost, or $31,000. This concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, great. Do we have any questions?
I'm not seeing any hands raised.
Neither am I. So I will entertain a motion on this.
Move approval.
Calamasa moves.
Spiegel will second.
And a roll call vote, please.
District 2,
Yes.
Beaumont,
Yes.
Calamasa,
Yes.
Canyon Lake,
Aye.
Cathedral City,
Yes.
Coachella,
Yes.
Lake Elsinore,
Aye.
Palm Desert,
Yes.
Palm Springs,
Aye.
Wildemar.
Aye.
Thank you. That item passes.
Thank you. Item 8 is a state and federal legislative platform and legislative update from David Knutson.
Good morning. Today I will provide you with a presentation and an update. Next slide, please. Today I'm going to focus my remarks on 2 items. 1, providing an update on the recently passed and signed Federal Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, and 2, adopt the Commission 2022 state and federal legislative platform. I'll begin with the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. Next slide, please. After months of congressional debate, the House passed the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act on November 6, 2021. President Biden signed the legislation on November 15th. The Infrastructure and Investment and Jobs Act, or IIJA, provides $1.2 trillion in total funding over 10 years for a broad range of infrastructure projects across the country. This bipartisan legislation also includes the 5-year reauthorization of surface transportation programs, funding these programs 34% higher than the current FAST Act. This includes the transportation funding in the reauthorization bill. IIJA also includes $550 billion in new transportation funding, including in the areas of surface transportation and aviation programs and discretionary funding opportunities. The bill also includes major new funding for EV infrastructure, rail highway grade crossings, Vision Zero plans and projects, climate resiliency, and rail and transit capital projects. Next slide, please. The IIJA provides unprecedented investment in the nation's transportation infrastructure. You can see just what I mean by looking at the table here. $348 billion for Federal Highway Administration, $91.2 billion for Federal Transit Administration, $66 billion for Federal Rail Administration, $15 billion for electric vehicle infrastructure, among other programs. Next slide, please. I'd like to now outline how the funding in IIJA is divided up. As I mentioned, the legislation allocates $1.2 trillion in total funding. This includes the 5-year reauthorization program spending, highlighted by the orange box, and the $550 billion in new spending. The $550 billion in new spending is divided between improving surface transportation networks, $284 billion, and core infrastructure projects, $266 billion. Next slide, please. This graph shows how the $284 billion in new surface transportation spending will be allocated. The largest portion, roads, bridges, and major projects has an increase of $110 billion. These funds are eligible to be used to upgrade roads and bridges and to address climate change and resiliency. You can also see the $66 billion for passenger rail. This is the largest investment in rail since the creation of the rail system. There are $39 billion more for transit. These funds are intended to modernize transit and improve accessibility. This allocation includes $5.3 billion to replace thousands of transit vehicles with zero emission vehicles. Next slide, please. The other portion of the $550 billion, as I mentioned, is the $266 billion allocated for core infrastructure. Core infrastructure includes power, water, broadband, and other environmental infrastructure. This spending will be administered by other federal agencies and departments outside of USDOT. Next slide, please. Over the next few slides, I'm going to highlight three specific programs. This first one, as I mentioned, is in the IIJA, includes the 5-year reauthorization of the FAST Act. Included in the reauthorization is an increase in formula or dedicated funding to the states. Last week, the USDOT provided its state-by-state formula-based apportionment estimates. Through the IIJA, California is expected to receive $29.5 billion over 5 years in federal highway formula funding for highways and bridges. On an average annual basis, this is about a 44% increase than the current federal aid highway formula funding under current law. As part of the new funding, California can expect to receive approximately $555 million over 5 years in formula funding to reduce transportation-related emissions, in addition to about $631 million over 5 years to increase the resilience of its transportation system. In addition, the IIJA will also increase funding through STBG program. California is also expected to receive $384 million in formula funding for EV infrastructure. And finally, the legislation establishes a new wildlife crossing pilot program. Next slide, please. Federal Transit Administration formula funding includes a $3 billion increase, and California's transit funding could grow from $1.4 billion in 2021 to $18 billion in FY 2022 and stay at the higher level for the next 5 years. IIJA also provides $66 billion in new funding for passenger and commuter rail. This $66 billion is intended to improve passenger rail service, eliminate Amtrak maintenance backlog, and modernize the Northeast Corridor. Within this amount, $22 billion could be provided as grants to Amtrak, $24 billion as federal state partnership grants for the Northeast Corridor Modernization Project, and $12 billion for partnership grants for intercity rail service, including high-speed rail. As part of this funding, California will be eligible to compete for $5 billion for rail improvement and safety grants and $3 billion for grade crossing safety improvements. IIJA authorizes the Rebuilding American Infrastructure and Sustainability and Equity Grant Program, otherwise known as RISE, and expands eligibility under the Consolidated Rail Infrastructure and Safety Improvements Grants Program, otherwise known as CRISI. Next slide, please. Finally, I'd like to highlight the new bridge funding. The IIJA makes the single largest dedicated bridge investment since the construction of the interstate highway system. The majority of funding, $27.5 billion over 5 years, will be distributed by formula to states. California can also compete for about $12.5 billion in bridge investment program for economically significant bridges over the next 5 years. Next slide, please. Looking forward, the U.S. Department of Transportation will direct the largest portion of IIJA's investments. Across all programs, approximately $300 billion in formula grants will be distributed through the IIJA. Formula grants provide predetermined funding to states based on various factors, for example, population size. And there's good news. Discretionary grant funds will be available, but we will need to see how these programs are structured and identify eligible projects. An important point to consider. While we're waiting for program eligibility criteria, we do know that USDOT will be looking for projects that can demonstrate sustainability, equity, environmental justice improvements, and climate resiliency. So to be competitive for grant funding, projects will need to address those issues in some manner. RCTC staff remain engaged on the implementation of the IIJA. Next slide. This brings us to why having an annual update to the Commission's state and federal legislative platform is so important. The platform addresses broad themes that are critical in both Sacramento and Washington, D.C. These platform points allow commissioners, the Commission's lobbyists, and staff to communicate in a timely, effective manner with state and federal agencies and elected representatives as issues arise. The proposed 2022 state and federal legislative platform builds on previously adopted Commission platforms. Adjustments were made to the 2021 Commission adopted platform based on activities taking place at the state and federal levels, including with the IIJA, the process by which federal core formula funds are distributed, and the state's implementation of the Climate Action Plan for Transportation Infrastructure, CAPDI. These new points include state and federal funding should be distributed equity to Riverside County, oppose efforts by state and federal governments to negate their obligations to maintain the state highway system, oppose state and federal policies which could dictate how tolling policy and rates are implemented on the Commission's tolled facilities, and support securing funding for intercity rail service between Los Angeles and Coachella Valley. Next slide, please. In conclusion, I've provided the committee with a lot of information today. Based on the data we've collected, California will receive the largest amount of funding from IIJA, second only to Texas. Staff will monitor closely how new and old programs establish project funding eligibility and will participate in that process. One final note, the state legislature is currently on recess, but we're getting news out of Sacramento even today that the state could realize another budget surplus, maybe as high as $31 billion. We'll be tracking this closely, and we will report back to the committee and the commission as we gather new information. The action before you today is to adopt the 2022 state and federal legislative platform and forward to the commission for final action. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, David. Is there anybody who would like to make a comment or have a question? I've not seen anybody. So at this point, I will entertain a motion. Oh, Lisa, did you want to speak?
I did. I couldn't find the raise hand feature. My apology. I'd like to get a copy of the slides that were just given. I think everybody else would as well. And really congratulate staff. This next year is going to be an incredibly important year as we try to take advantage as much as we can of the kind of funding that has not been available in our adult lifetimes.
Thank you. Linda, before you go, I have a quick question for you, David. On slide number 9, you had mentioned it was going to increase from 1.4 billion to 18 billion, but the slide says 1.8 billion. So I just wanted to make sure I pointed that out to you.
Thank you. I misspoke. It is to the 1.8 billion overall,
Okay.
not the 18.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Molina, you're up.
Yes, I just wanted to thank David. This is a fantastic report. I too was going to ask for copies of the slides so that I can bring it to my council so that we can get our council to support these action items and contact our legislators. But this is wonderful, wonderful news for the past cities. A lot of money available for us, and look forward to getting some good business and much needed services. Thank you so much for the presentation.
Thank you. Anne, would you like to, you're up next.
I would. Thank you very much. Commissioners, these are, as has been mentioned, these are real opportunities for us to try to position our projects and programs to be eligible for these funding types, especially with the Justice 40 program related to all of the discretionary funds, and we have a significant number of disadvantaged communities throughout the county. But one thing I would emphasize to all of you, and we will emphasize it to your representatives on our technical advisory committee, it is even more important now than it ever has been when they are performing environmental clearances for your local projects, that they clear their projects under the National Environmental Protection Act, the NEPA Act. Many jurisdictions, because of the strings attached to a NEPA clearance and the time it takes to do it, don't do NEPA clearances on projects. And what that means when those projects come to RCTC and say, you know, we need some help, we need some SDBG money, or we need some other money, we don't have any to give because they're not cleared environmentally. So that I know that's down in the weeds, but never has the weeds have the weeds been more important than now. We really encourage, if there's any chance that a project could be funded with federal funding, that your local public works directors make sure they have their NEPA clearances. Otherwise, they won't be able to take advantage of it. And you know, especially, you know, to think that there's money now being invested in the bridge programs. We have so many bridges throughout the entirety of the county in your communities that need to be upgraded. We need to make sure that we're eligible for those bridge funds. So we will have the technical conversations at the TAC, but I also wanted to make sure that I shared that with you as well. Is let's maintain all of our eligibility across the board to make sure we can take advantage of some of these fund types. So thank you.
Thank you, Ann. I have a question for you. I would like to, as what Commissioner Molina pointed out, present the presentation to our council. Would it be possible to add a slide about what you just spoke about, just so that the council members are aware of what you're talking about?
Yes, certainly.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? Commissioner Benoit?
Yeah, just really quickly, Ann, is there anything else we could be doing to support some of our smaller cities to help go after these funds other than just telling them, hey, you got to do this? I mean, is there anything else we could really be doing as an organization? And this is one of those times where is it worth us all combined as an effort for RCTC to maybe spend a little money to hire either consultants or other groups to help us pull down these funds? You know, I look at the combined effort and think all of our cities working together will probably do better. But if you're also saying we need to individually each city do it, could we be doing something as a region and do that better?
So always we do have some grant writing capabilities on board. We primarily use those for RCTC related projects. I think one of the areas we can and should focus on at the local level is helping our member agencies understand where they're most competitive. In that grants are very costly to pursue. And many jurisdictions, don't have the money to pursue them and or pursue them, spend the money, pursue them when their likelihood of getting any of the grant money is really minimal. So I think where we can enhance our efforts is maybe, you know, putting together a package that says, you know, here are the grant programs and here are the kinds of projects that you could submit under these grant programs. So I think that's where we could be most helpful. We've always offered and will continue to offer that anytime a member agency pursues a grant at either the state or federal level, we are happy to review the grant application, make suggestions, provide input. We have participated in debriefs that our member agencies have had, like, for example, with California Transportation Commission. So yes, there is a lot that we can do. But I'll use an example. For some of these really big grants that are, where there'll be hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars of requests around the country, it may not make sense to have a local road submitted in the same grant competing with, the city of New York and Los Angeles. I mean, even for us, there are times we don't compete because it's just not going to be worth the money invested. So I think we have a lot of opportunity here for discussion, and the TAC is a great venue to have those conversations, and we'll do that there. So we will follow up.
Thank you. That was a great suggestion, Ben. Appreciate that. Anybody else have questions? Commissioner, I guess we're good to go. I need to get a motion.
Move the item.
Mason seconds.
And a roll call vote, please.
District 2, District 2,
I'm sorry, yes.
thank you. Beaumont,
Yes.
Calamasa,
Yes, and thank you, Ben, for your comments. Great comments. Thank you.
Canyon Lake,
Aye.
Cathedral City,
Yes.
Coachella,
Yes.
Lake Elsinore,
Aye.
Palm Desert,
Yes.
Palm Springs,
Aye.
Wildemar.
Aye.
Thank you. The item passes.
All right, item 9, local transportation fund advance loan to transit operators. Eric DeHate.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, committee members. The item before you is for the approval of the local transportation fund advancement loans to transit operators. The passing of the Public Employee Pension Reform Act, also known as PEPRA, in 2013, which is California's pension reform law, establishes limits on California public employee defined pensions plans. Since its inception, there were certification issues between transit operators, transit unions, and the United States Department of Labor, also known as the DOL. Transit unions have asserted that PEPRA impacts their collective bargaining rights. And in order for federal grants to be released to a federal recipient, the DOL is required to certify that an agency is in compliance with the Urban Mass Transportation Act, Section 13 of it, which allows for labor unions to have fair and equitable arrangements to protect interests of affected employees. In 2014, 2015, for Riverside County, this caused delayed access to federal funds for operations and capital projects. And also during that time frame, the commission provided short-term relief through LTF loans to bridge the gap in the funding that they weren't able to secure. These loans were mostly made to RTA and Sunline. And shortly thereafter, the DOL began certifying transit grants in 2015, in which RTA and Sunline then repaid back the commission. Since then, there has been ongoing litigation, and in October of 2021, the DOL changed its stance on the court's interpretation of PEPRA and has taken a position that PEPRA substantially diminishes the affected union's ability to bargain over future pension benefits, which constitutes a violation of Section 13 of the Urban Mass Transportation Act. With the DOL's stance change come certification issues with transit grants. As such, staff has identified approximately $21.4 million in federal funding, which could be delayed in fiscal year 21-22. And as Table 1 in the staff report demonstrates, this may impact the cities of Corona and Riverside, and also RTA and Sunline. So once hearing about this, staff took a proactive approach in identifying the amounts each agency may need if its federal transit grants are held up due to certification issues. Similar to 2015, staff is recommending short-term loans to bridge the funding gap. These loans are contingent upon board approvals from the respective transit agency. They will also need to submit a request to us in writing, and that these loans will need to be paid back to the commission within 14 days of receipt of federal funds. If the operators do not request the loans in fiscal year 21-22, then they will expire by the end of the fiscal year. And should the DOL certification issue continue into 22-23, additional loan advance requests will be needed to be included in the next SRTP and transit funding cycle. And just a little bit more developments on this issue. The CTA, California Transit Association, and others have voiced concern over the DOL's change in stance on this issue. You may have even seen some news articles, and even the CTA have stated that as much as $12 billion for transit operators could be stuck in a legal battle between the state, transit operators, transit unions, and the DOL in just fiscal year 21-22 alone. With that, we're trying to move forward with at least the short-term loan agreements to try to help bridge those funding gaps as we await resolution. So before the committee is the recommendation to approve loan advances to LTF funds up to $21.4 million to the cities of Corona and Riverside for RTA and Sunline under the condition that these loans are repaid to the commission within 14 days of receipt of FTA funds and forward to the commission for final actions. With that, I'll take any questions you might have.
And I see you have your hand raised.
I do a little bit of information related to the legislative aspect of this. I mean, this is a very important action for the commission to take to make sure that our transit partners can continue to operate. But we are also engaged on the legislative front as well, although we are not a transit agency. We did sign it on last week to a multi-county Southern California letter related to this issue. Also, our partners to the west with some of the largest transit agencies, OCTA, LA Metro, and also some partners up in Northern California have been very active as well. And certainly given the size of their programs, their voice can be heard more readily than many of the smaller agencies. But I just want to let you know that this is a statewide conversation, and not only is CTA rallying, but also the larger transit agencies are rallying to communicate the impact of this as well. The current FTA administrator, Nuria Fernandez, is from, she was recently in California, up in Northern California in Santa Clara County. So she is familiar with this issue. That being said, this is not a FTA decision. This is a Department of Labor decision. So stay tuned. We are engaging on all fronts in support of our transit agencies here in Riverside County. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Gregory, you're up next.
Thank you so much. Just to clarify for my own sake, I guess, or for the committees, I certainly support this action if it becomes necessary. It sounds like a good step to have in place in case these loans are needed. I noticed I'm a little confused. When I think of PEPRA, I think of PERS agencies. I know that Sunlight, in fact, is not a PERS agency. I don't know about the others, but I'm not sure if they still would qualify by the type of pension plan that they do hold. I'm assuming that has been researched and that historically that was an issue. I also noted the DOL letter mentions RTA, but it doesn't mention the other lender. So I certainly support taking this action if it's necessary. I'm just not really clear on those details.
This Commissioner, to respond back. So when a transit agency goes to certify or submits a federal grant in the federal grant systems, they have to list all of the transit unions within the entire county. So even though the major player in this is really ATU, the Obligated Transit Union, who specifically works with RTA, would object to any grant that's being certified for any transit operator that they're listed on. So while it may not affect specifically the cities of Corona, Riverside, and even Sunline, if they object, the DOL may decide not to certify those grants based on their objections. So the reason why we were trying to take a broad approach to this was because of the way that the grant structure is and how they have to report all of the unions. So even this last year, there was a grant that was potentially delayed to one of our own station grants because they were listed on the grant application, but they were allowed to certify that grant. So it's just to take a more of a broad approach to make sure that those funds, if they are held up, we can provide that short-term relief as they're awaiting for the issue to be resolved.
Okay, yes, so that explains it. Thank you so much.
Commissioner Middleton.
Just to address Commissioner Gregory's question, PEPRA applies to all public agency retirement programs, whether they are administered by CalPERS or one of the many other retirement systems that are not CalPERS administered. And without digging, it's a separate issue, but without digging into the weeds of what PEPRA did and did not do, the implications financially for public entities across California are almost incalculable. They are such a tremendous difference.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, so I guess we do need a motion on this one as well.
Move approval, Cathedral City.
Second, Palm Desert.
A roll call, please.
District 2,
Yes.
Beaumont,
Yes.
Calamasa,
Definite yes.
Canyon Lake.
Aye.
Cathedral City,
Yes.
Coachella,
Yes.
Lake Elsinore,
Aye.
Palm Desert,
Yes.
Palm Springs,
Aye.
Wildemar.
Aye.
Thank you. The item passes.
Thank you. And we had no items pulled from the consent calendar. Do we have a report from the executive director?
You do. Thank you very much. Commissioners, as you may recall from the last commission meeting, we talked about moving the commission meetings to a hybrid setting. I just wanted to remind you of that, but also to remind you that on December 7th, 2 things are happening in addition to our commission meeting. We did receive confirmation that the Caltrans director, Tokes Omashakin, will be at our commission meeting in person to make a presentation and to be available for questions and answers. So for those of you deciding whether you will or will not be there in person or here in person on that day, if you do want to be here in person, he will be here in person as well. So this is an important opportunity from my perspective in that so many of the state policies related to transportation, we've been sharing a lot about them and they're very impactful on our county, but you will have the director here in person and this is a real opportunity to be able to talk to him about some of the policies that they're moving forward with, especially related to no new capacity on the state highway system, except in very limited circumstances. So big opportunity there. And then also that afternoon, the California Transportation Commission will be here both on the 7th and on the 8th for their December meeting. They are also having a hybrid meeting. It sounds like many of the CTC commissioners will be here in person. It sounds like the director of Caltrans will be here. I am not sure if the Secretary of Transportation will be here in person, but the CTC meeting will be downstairs starting in the afternoon of December 7th. So they did ask us if we wanted to have a short presentation on innovation in transportation. And so Aaron Hake will be doing a presentation on the benefit of the Riverside County Integrated Project. I think there is a misperception about how land use decisions and planning and transportation decisions are made in Riverside County. And this gives a great opportunity to share that for 20 years, this county has been very proactive and progressive related to land use issues. So anyway, December, we will have a lot going on December 7th. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Harnick?
Thank you. So on the 7th and on the 8th, what is the best way as commissioners that we can participate, support, influence? What's the best thing that you would advise us to do to make sure that everyone hears us?
I'm looking at Haviva. I think I can answer that question since this isn't a discussion item. I think attendance, whether by hybrid, by in person or virtual, I think participation in our commission meeting and in the conversation with the director of Caltrans is probably the most significant thing that this commission could do, in addition to asking questions about things that your constituents are asking you about. So I think that's the biggest way that commissioners could be of support and assistance, but also making sure that there's a public conversation about the direction that the department is heading and the impact on all of our plans and programs. So to me, that is the number one way to make an impact in December.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Gregory?
Thank you so much. So just confirming the commission meeting is on December 7th, not the 8th, so it's on Tuesday. Is that correct?
Nope, Anne is, I am using the wrong dates. I'm
Okay, you
sorry.
can say it didn't
I
show.
apologize. I keep saying December 7th. I apologize. It is December 8th and 9th. I apologize.
Oh, no problem. I just was going to update my calendar. I'm so glad you clarified.
So it's
Nope.
8 and 9?
It is the 8th and 9th. Yeah, it's the 8th and 9th. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
I have more questions because I'm looking at 7th and 8th. Now I'm looking at 8 and 9. So the 9th, can you please tell us again what will occur on the 9th?
The CTC meetings are 2-day meetings.
Okay.
So they'll start the meeting, most of their so their structure is policy discussion is on the first day. So the afternoon of the 8th is when the secretary will speak. They'll talk about, policy issues. The 9th is probably more of a business day where they'll be voting on making allocations. They don't take public comments till the very end of the meeting. But anyway, if you're allocating your time, I would say early afternoon on the 8th, probably from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock would be the most productive use of your time on that date. The 9th is probably just business there's nothing that's of significance for us on the agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Molina.
Yes, I just wanted to know if we'll be getting an invitation to attend those, either in person or if we choose to go online, virtual.
So our commission meeting, you'll get your normal commission agenda
Okay.
for our commission meeting. And for
Okay.
the CTC meeting, we will send out a copy of their agenda so you can see how to join.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no other hands raised, we'll move on to commissioner comments, which is the item that provides the opportunity for brief announcements or comments on items or matters of general interest. Do we have anyone who has a matter of general interest they'd like to talk about? Supervisor Spiegel.
Just wishing everybody a very happy Thanksgiving, and hopefully that we could reach out to those around us that may not have family and friends to join, at least give them a little bit of our warmth and our gratitude.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yes, this is Linda. I just want to ditto Karen's comments. This is the time of year when reaching out is just so vitally important, and sharing care with other people. Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone.
Thank you. So our next meeting will be in January 24th. And everyone have a great Thanksgiving and stay safe. And we'll see you at the meeting in December.
Thank you.